You say, "I cannot take this on this weekend." They answer, "So this just is not important to you." You explain that you already made a commitment. You explain that you are exhausted. You explain that you have helped the last 3 weekends. You explain that saying no to one request is not the same as not caring. They listen, choose one sentence, and answer, "You always have an excuse." Now you are no longer discussing the weekend. You are defending your character. 20 minutes later, they do not understand you better. But they know more private details about your schedule, your energy, your family, and your guilt. You have offered evidence for a trial you never agreed to enter. This is how over-explaining often begins. Not with a love of talking, but with the hope that one more detail will finally produce a fair verdict. Sometimes it will. People miss information. You may have spoken badly. A question can be sincere. A second explanation can repair a real misunderstanding. But sometimes the problem is not missing information. Sometimes the other person understood the decision and simply dislikes it. Sometimes every explanation becomes new material to challenge, reinterpret, or use against you. If you treat all 3 situations as the same, you will either talk forever or become silent too soon. So this video is not going to tell you never to explain yourself. That would be irresponsible. It is going to give you a way to know what kind of conversation you are in. You will learn the difference between honest confusion, real disagreement, and repeated distortion. You will learn a 4-part method for giving one clear explanation. And you will learn where a Stoic places the stopping point, not where discomfort disappears, but where your responsibility has been met and no new truth is being exchanged. Because calm does not mean having no answer. It means giving the answer that is yours to give, then refusing to spend your dignity trying to control the verdict. Before you decide to explain more, diagnose the conversation. There are at least 3 different experiences that can sound like, "You do not understand me." The first is honest confusion. The other person is missing a fact, a definition, or part of your reasoning. They ask a question, and your answer changes what they understand. They may say, "I thought you meant Tuesday, not Thursday," or "I did not realize that decision affected your schedule." Honest confusion responds to information. It has movement. The conversation becomes clearer as relevant facts are added. The second is real disagreement. The person understands your position, but they do not share it. They can repeat what you mean accurately and still say, "I disagree." This may be uncomfortable, but it is not a communication failure. 2 adults can understand each other and reach different conclusions. Over-explaining often happens because you refuse to accept that distinction. You keep adding reasons because disagreement feels like proof that you have not explained well enough. But no perfect sentence can guarantee agreement. The third is repeated distortion. You state a limit, and the person turns it into a judgment about your love. You correct the judgment, and they replace it with another. You answer a question, and the standard changes. The conversation does not move toward clarity, because clarity is not being used as the criterion. Repeated distortion has a pattern. Your actual words become less important than the role you have been assigned. Selfish, difficult, disloyal, cold, ungrateful, too sensitive, or not committed enough. Notice the word repeated. One inaccurate reaction does not prove manipulation. People become defensive. They misunderstand tone. They hear old pain inside new words. You also make mistakes. A Stoic should be careful about declaring another person malicious simply because a conversation is hard. The evidence is not that they reacted badly once. The evidence is that correction does not correct anything. You clarify, but the same accusation returns. You answer, but the standard changes. You ask what they heard, but they avoid the question. You accept a fair criticism, but they continue demanding a confession to something you did not do. That is when you need a different goal. In honest confusion, your goal is clarity. In real disagreement, your goal is respect without forced agreement. In repeated distortion, your goal is to preserve truth, conduct, and limits without feeding an endless trial. The first category may need more information, the second needs tolerance, the third needs an ending. If over-explaining leaves you exhausted, why do you keep doing it? Because in the moment, more words feel like more control. You imagine that the misunderstanding exists somewhere inside the sentence. If you can find the perfect wording, remove every sharp edge, provide enough history, and answer every possible objection, the other person will have no reason to judge you unfairly. This is a comforting idea. It places the outcome inside your technique. But the comfort is temporary. The more you explain, the more possible points of attack you create. You add 5 details. Now there are 5 details to dispute. You offer 3 reasons. Now the person can reject one and pretend the entire decision depends on it. You speak for 10 minutes. Now, one imperfect phrase can replace the point you were trying to make. More context can produce clarity, but context without a limit can bury the central sentence. Consider a composite example. Maya is fictional. She is not a client, a viewer, or a real testimonial. Maya works on a small team. On Friday afternoon, a colleague asks her to take over a weekend project. Maya has already covered several last-minute requests, and she has a family commitment. She says, "I cannot take this project this weekend, but I can review it Monday morning." The colleague responds, "I guess some of us are more committed than others." Maya feels the accusation immediately. Her first answer was complete. It gave the decision and an alternative, but now the subject is no longer the project. The subject is whether Maya is a good teammate, so she explains. She lists the weekends she already worked. She describes the family commitment. She mentions that she slept badly. She explains what she completed that week. She apologizes for the timing, even though she did not create the deadline. The colleague answers, "You did not have to give me your life story." Maya now feels both accused and embarrassed. This is the trap. She was not only trying to communicate, she was trying to make it impossible for the other person to hold an unfair opinion. That goal cannot be completed by speech. You can make your meaning clearer. You can correct a false fact. You can apologize for actual harm. You can show evidence where evidence matters. But you cannot arrange another person's mind so that it produces the judgment you prefer. When you forget this, explanation stops being communication. It becomes emotional bargaining. The bargain sounds like this: if I give you enough access to my reasons, you must give me innocence. But the other person never signed that contract. Over-explaining often contains an invisible demand. Please understand quietly becomes, please agree that I am good. That is why a simple disagreement can feel unbearable. You are not only hearing that someone wants a different outcome, you are hearing that your explanation failed to protect your identity. Then you begin to negotiate against yourself. You soften a clear no into a maybe. You reveal private information that is not necessary. You apologize for having a limit. You offer alternatives you cannot sustain. You promise to compensate for a decision that required no compensation. The conversation may become calmer, but only because your boundary became weaker. This can happen in families. You say you will not attend an event. A relative asks why. You give a reason. The reason is criticized, so you add another. That reason is called selfish, so you add history. Soon you are not deciding whether to attend. You are submitting your life to a committee. It can happen in relationships. You ask for a night alone. Your partner hears rejection. You clarify that you need rest. They say rest should include them. You explain your week, your stress, your habits, and your intentions. At some point, you may need a deeper conversation about connection. But no amount of detail can make another person feel zero disappointment. It can happen at work. You identify a deadline that cannot be met responsibly. A manager asks for the constraints. That is legitimate. You provide them. If the manager then sets priorities and accepts the trade-off, the explanation served the work. If the conversation keeps returning to your attitude, instead of the actual resources and deadlines, you may be facing a different problem. The hidden contract tells you that a good person can always produce a reaction with no disappointment, no anger, and no criticism. That standard is impossible. A responsible decision can still disappoint someone. A fair boundary can still be disliked. A truthful answer can still be misread. Your task is not to remove every difficult emotion from the room. Your task is to speak truthfully, listen carefully, correct what is yours, and remain willing to carry the honest consequences of your decision. This is where Stoicism becomes practical, not as a way to silence other people and not as a costume of coldness, as a discipline of knowing which part of the conversation belongs to your character and which part belongs to another person's judgment. Epictetus begins the Enchiridion by separating what depends on us from what does not. In a modern paraphrase, your judgments, choices and actions belong to your responsibility. Reputation and the opinions of other people do not belong to you in the same way. This does not mean reputation is irrelevant. It can affect work, relationships, trust, and opportunity. If someone has a false belief that can cause real harm, you may need to correct the record. Stoicism is not passivity. The distinction is about command. You can command the accuracy of your statement. You cannot command the conclusion another mind draws from it. You can choose patience. You cannot choose whether patience will be called weakness. You can choose a fair boundary. You cannot choose whether someone will describe it as selfish. You can answer a sincere question. You cannot force sincerity into a question designed only to keep you defending yourself. Epictetus returns to this problem in section 42. When someone acts or speaks against you, he asks you to remember that the person is following what appears right to them. His short conclusion is, "It seemed so to him." That sentence is not permission for injustice. It is a reminder that people react to appearances inside their own judgment. Sometimes better information changes that appearance. Sometimes it does not. Your freedom begins when you stop treating another person's current appearance as an order you must obey. But Stoic freedom also includes correction. Marcus Aurelius writes in Meditations, Book 6, "For I seek the truth, whereby no one was ever harmed." The surrounding thought is about being willing to amend an idea or action when it is shown to be wrong. That matters here. Refusing to over-explain is not the same as refusing to be corrected. The Stoic standard is not, "I said it once, therefore I am right." The standard is, "I will remain available to truth, but I will not remain on trial before a moving accusation." Truth can show you a missed fact. Truth can show you that your tone was cruel. Truth can show you that your decision affected someone more than you admitted. When that happens, change course, apologize, repair what you can, but repetition is not evidence. Volume is not evidence. Another person's disappointment is not, by itself, evidence that your decision was unjust. You need a process that keeps you open without making you endless. Use 4 steps: state, context, check, stop. First, state the decision or fact in 1 sentence. Do not begin with a long defense. Give the central sentence enough room to be heard. "I cannot take the project this weekend." "I am leaving the conversation if the insults continue." "I did not agree to that expense." "I need tonight to myself." Clarity is not aggression. A sentence can be direct and respectful at the same time. Second, give the context required for responsibility. Required context is information that helps a legitimate stakeholder understand the decision, evaluate a shared problem, or act safely. It is not every detail that might make you look sympathetic. Maya might say, "I already have a commitment and I can review the work Monday morning." That is useful context. Her sleep, family history, private emotions, and record of every past favor are not necessary unless they directly affect a shared decision. Third, check what the person actually heard. This is the step most people skip. Instead of offering a 5th explanation, ask a question. What do you understand me to be saying? Which part is unclear? Are you asking for information, or are you asking me to change the decision? What fact would this additional detail help you evaluate? A sincere conversation usually becomes more specific after a question like this. The person identifies the missing information, or they admit that they understand and disagree. Repeated distortion usually becomes visible too. The person avoids your actual words, returns to a character accusation, or demands that you keep talking without naming what would resolve the issue. Fourth, stop when no new information is being exchanged. You can say, "I have explained the decision and answered the question. I understand that you disagree." Or, "That is not what I said, and I'm not going to keep defending a different version of my words. Or, if there is a new fact to discuss, I will listen. I am not repeating the same argument. Then stop. Do not announce the limit and immediately add 3 more paragraphs. Do not use silence as a dramatic threat. Do not wait for the perfect final line that makes you look invulnerable. The stopping point works only when you allow the conversation to remain emotionally unfinished. The other person may still think you are wrong. They may become quiet. They may tell a story about your refusal to continue. The discomfort is real. But discomfort is not an emergency. You completed your part. A clear statement, necessary context, a check for understanding, and openness to new information. What remains is not always yours to solve. How do you know the stopping point has arrived? Ask one question. Are we exchanging new information or repeating a verdict? New information can change the problem. Your partner says, "I understand that you need a quiet night. What I did not tell you is that I already made a reservation for us. Now there is a fact to consider." Your manager says, "I understand the workload, but the client contract requires delivery on Monday." Now the constraints need a real decision. Your friend says, "I heard your no as rejection because you cancelled the last 3 times." Now there is a pattern you may need to address. A repeated verdict does not change the problem. A caring person would do it. If you were really committed, you would find a way. You are just being difficult. These statements may reveal emotion, but they do not automatically identify a missing fact. You can acknowledge the emotion without accepting the verdict. I can hear that you are disappointed. My answer is still no. I understand that this creates a problem. Let us discuss the priority, not my character. I'm willing to talk about the 3 cancellations. I'm not willing to agree that one boundary proves I do not care. There are other signs of diminishing clarity. The question changes every time you answer it. Your exact words are replaced with more extreme versions. Private details are demanded even though they will not change the shared decision. Past conflicts are introduced faster than any one conflict can be resolved. You are pressured to admit a motive you have already denied. Your apology for one action is treated as confession to a larger identity. The conversation has no stated condition for completion. When these patterns appear, do not race to diagnose the other person. Return to the process. What is the current question? What information is missing? What is my responsibility? What would count as resolution? If no one can answer those questions, the conversation may no longer be organized around understanding. That does not always mean the relationship is hopeless. It may mean both people need time. It may mean the conversation needs structure, a written record, a neutral third party, or a calmer moment. Stopping now is not the same as refusing forever. You can say, "We are repeating ourselves. I'm going to pause this conversation and we can return to the specific issue tomorrow." This is not abandonment. It is a refusal to confuse duration with depth. Principles become useful when you can speak them under pressure. So let us make the language simple. At work, begin with facts and trade-offs. I can complete the report or the presentation by Friday, but not both at the required standard. Which is the priority? If your commitment is questioned, return to the work. I am discussing capacity, not willingness. Which outcome should take priority? If the accusation repeats, close the loop. I have explained the constraint. I am ready to discuss scope, deadline, or resources. This is stronger than listing every late night you have ever worked. It places the conversation where a professional decision can be made. In a family conversation, separate love from compliance. I care about you, and I am not available on Sunday. If the response is, "If you cared, you would come," you can say, "My answer may disappoint you. It is not a measure of whether I care." If the same accusation returns, do not begin proving the entire relationship. I have answered the invitation. I am not going to debate my character. In a close relationship, do not use concision to avoid intimacy. If your decision affects the other person, they deserve more than a slogan. You might say, "I need tonight alone because I am mentally tired." This is not punishment, and I would like to spend time together tomorrow. What are you hearing in that? If they say, I hear that you need rest, but I feel disconnected, that is new information. Stay in the conversation. If they say, no loving partner would ever want time alone, you can disagree without submitting to the rule. I hear that this hurts. I do not agree that needing one quiet night means I do not love you. Online, explanation should be even more selective. A stranger who has ignored your actual statement is not automatically entitled to your history. You can correct one factual error. After that, ask whether another reply serves truth or only keeps you inside a public contest. And when you have made a mistake, be direct. I said something inaccurate. Here is the correction. My tone was disrespectful. I am sorry. I did not consider how this affected you. I want to repair that. Do not hide a real apology inside 10 paragraphs of self-defense. Concision is not only for boundaries, it is also a form of accountability. The purpose of these sentences is not to memorize a performance. It is to preserve a structure when emotion tries to pull you into a courtroom. State what is true. Give what is relevant. Check understanding. Remain open to new facts. Refuse the moving trial. There is a dangerous way to misuse this message. A person can say, I do not owe anyone an explanation, when what they really mean is, I do not want to face the effects of my choices. That is not Stoic self-command. It is avoidance. You may owe more explanation when your decision changes a shared responsibility. If you share money, parenting, housing, deadlines, safety, or long-term commitments, your reasons may be part of another person's ability to act wisely. Privacy still matters, but partnership requires information. You may owe more explanation when you caused harm. An apology without understanding can be empty. The injured person may need to know what you recognize, what will change, and how repair will happen. You may owe more explanation when your authority affects someone with less power. A manager, parent, teacher, or leader cannot use I said what I said to avoid fairness. A decision may need criteria, documentation, and a real path for questions. You may owe more explanation when your first statement was vague, contradictory, or delivered in anger. Being concise does not make an unclear statement clear. If your words created confusion, correct them. You may owe more explanation when the facts have changed. A stopping point is not a permanent shield against new evidence. And in situations involving abuse, coercion, discrimination, employment consequences, legal issues, or safety, a short personal script may not be enough. Documentation and qualified support can matter more than a philosophical conversation. The difference is responsibility. Ask, does this person need this information to make a shared decision, evaluate real harm, fulfill a duty, or remain safe? If yes, give the relevant explanation. Then ask, am I adding information, or am I trying to purchase a favorable opinion? That second question protects you from turning responsibility into self-erasure. Maya owed her colleague a clear answer about capacity and a workable alternative. If the project belonged to her role, she also owed accurate information about deadlines and handoff. She did not owe private family details as proof that her limit was morally acceptable. The line is not always obvious. Mature judgment is rarely a slogan. But the line becomes clearer when you stop asking, how much must I say before they approve of me? And begin asking, what information does responsibility actually require? That question is quieter. It is also much harder to manipulate. For the next 7 days, practice speaking with enough clarity and no extra defense. On day 1, notice the second explanation. Do not try to change anything yet. Catch the moment after you have already answered and feel the urge to add more. Write down what you hope the next sentence will achieve. Will it add a fact, or will it ask the other person to reassure you that you are good? On day 2, find the central sentence. Before sending one message or email, ask, if they remember only one sentence, which sentence must it be? Put that sentence first. Remove context that does not change the decision or the reader's next action. On day 3, use one verification question. When a conversation becomes confusing, do not immediately explain again. Ask, what do you understand me to be saying? Listen to the answer. You may discover a real gap. You may also discover that the person understands perfectly and wants a different decision. On day 4, tolerate a clean disagreement. Say, "I understand that you disagree," without treating disagreement as a request for another defense. Notice what happens in your body. You may feel pressure to reopen the case. Let the pressure exist for a moment without obeying it. On day 5, separate empathy from reversal. Use one sentence such as, "I can see that this disappoints you." Then keep your decision if it remains responsible. Empathy acknowledges an emotion. It does not automatically transfer control of the choice. On day 6, repair something real. Find one conversation where you were unclear, dismissive, or wrong. Offer a direct correction without hiding inside explanations. "I was wrong about that fact. I spoke unfairly. I need to give you more information because this affects you too." This day matters because the goal is not to become harder to reach. The goal is to become easier to understand and more willing to take responsibility. On day 7, end one repeated loop. Choose a low-risk conversation that has already received a clear answer. If the same verdict returns without new information, say, "I have answered this, and I am not going to repeat the argument." Then follow through calmly. Do not punish. Do not send a final speech. Do not monitor whether your silence makes them anxious. Return your attention to the next responsibility in front of you. At the end of the week, review 3 questions. Where did fewer words create more clarity? Where did you stop too early and need to return with more responsibility? Where did you discover that the conversation was never waiting for a better explanation? The purpose of the practice is not to make every answer short. It is to make every answer intentional. Return to the first conversation. "I cannot take this on this weekend. So this just is not important to you." You can feel the old impulse. The history, the evidence, the private details, the perfect defense all begin forming at once. But now you pause. You state the decision. You give the context that responsibility requires. You check what the other person heard. And if the conversation keeps returning to a distorted version of your words, you stop supplying new material to the distortion. You do not need to become cold. You do not need to pretend their opinion has no effect on you. You do not need to win the final exchange. You need to remain truthful enough to be corrected, clear enough to be understood, and steady enough to survive disagreement. That is the Stoic balance. Your conduct remains open to examination. Your identity does not remain open to endless prosecution. Some people will understand you after one clear explanation. Some will need time. Some will understand and still disagree. And some will continue protecting a version of you that makes their own position easier. You cannot control which response appears. You can control whether you abandon accuracy, privacy, and self-respect, trying to force a different one. So before your next long defense, ask, "Is there new information to exchange, or am I trying to change a verdict?" If there is information, speak. If there is truth, receive it. If there is harm, repair it. If there is only repetition, let the answer be complete. You said enough. Now let your conduct continue the sentence. If this is where you struggle most, tell me in the comments, work, family, or relationships. And subscribe to Mind Under Control for practical Stoicism about emotional discipline, self-respect, and the strength to respond without surrendering your mind.